Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, the 30th of September 2025. It's about 6:15 on a foggy morning, and I'm about a kilometre into my run. These foggy mornings are not entirely unusual during spring. The days are getting warmer, and the nights still get cold. So the cold air settles at night and forms the fog, which, as the sun comes out, it sort of burns it off. So forecasting about 26 degrees today, I think. Still fog to start off with. Hopefully it won't take too much longer to clear. And I thought, while I was running today, I would talk a bit more about the Berlin Marathon and Ben and Mary Bridges. And no, I'm not obsessed with them, and I'm not stalking them, but they put out a second video about their performance, and I watched it, and I thought I would give you some of what they said. In the cold light of day, they're able to analyse things a bit more rather than just respond to the emotion of the day and their disappointment at their performance. Now, to be fair, as I said in the last time I talked about them, full credit to anyone who turns up and completes a marathon, no matter what the time or the pace. But they had a bunch of goals and things in mind that they wanted to achieve with their performance, and they were disappointed that they didn't. Again, to be fair, he wanted to run something like 2:35, 2:36, that is 2 hours 35, 2 hours 36, something like that, and finished up running 2 hours 40 something. So certainly not a shabby performance, and nothing to be ashamed of, just not what he wanted. She wanted to run 3 hours and 8, and I think she said her time was 3 hours and 16. So again, not shabby, and nothing to be beating yourself up about, but not what they wanted. Now, they did some deeper thinking and more analysis. They talked about 3 things in the video that I watched. And if I remember, I'll put a link in the description so you can watch it for yourself. But the 3 things I recall them talking mostly about were their training, their carbo loading, and tapering. And as I said in the last video, talking about them, they've made a lot of videos talking about their training. They see their channel as a way of sharing their experiences and hoping that people who watch it and subscribe, or even if it's just casual watchers, will learn from their videos. And sometimes we know that we learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. So I'm only talking about things that they've already said and they've already talked about. And in their training, they said they had done all the sessions, all the blocks, the long runs, the recovery runs, thresholds, all that sort of stuff. They've done their track work, they do the strength and conditioning, they've done everything that they knew they should have done and that they would have told anyone they coached, this is what you've got to do to prepare for this event. However, they both made two interesting observations about the training. In Ben's case, he said he did too many sessions wearing carbon fibre plate shoes. Now, it's just not a aha, season on it, see, I told you that magic shoes were no good. Because if I recall what he said in the video about his kit, he said he's going to wear Vaporflies, which I assume is some sort of carbon fibre, carbon plate magic shoe of some sort. But he said that in his training sessions, he did too many sessions wearing that type of shoe. Now, I presume the problem with that is that it doesn't prepare your legs or give your legs enough of the feel that you get from wearing other sorts of shoes. And even though you might wear the magic shoes on the day, you still want that feeling and the conditioning, if you want. I can't think of a better word to describe it, but the conditioning that wearing your normal shoes gives you, running on hard surfaces, as you are going to be doing when you run a street marathon like that. So something about the carbon fibre shoes he felt wasn't right for his training, and he presumably will either not wear them in training or wear them less often anyway. Now, in her case, she said that she did too many sessions on the treadmill. Now, morning, I assume she says that for a similar reason. I get it sometimes when people are busy and they can't always devote an hour to just running out on the roads like I am at the moment, for example. These two people are working and the treadmill's just in the corner. You just get up and get on it. I don't have a treadmill, so I never do that. But I think again that there's a difference. Even though the treadmill might be inclined, and you can increase the inclination and therefore the effort that you need to do. It's not the same as running on the road or running outdoors, whereas on the road or the trail or whatever. That builds up a certain condition, for want of a better word again, in your body, and I assume that by running on the treadmill she didn't have that same strength of feeling, or the same feeling. He said that he knew after about 1 kilometre that it just wasn't going to be his day, and so for the rest of the event he had to modify his race strategy and say, well, I expect to run this pace and I'm not to factor in what pace I can run, finishing time, so forth. She said after about 5 Ks he started to feel hot and sluggish, her heart rate was too high, and again she had to make adjustments to her strategy and so forth. So as far as the training goes, they've learnt something. They're going to go back to Thailand, train for a few more weeks, and then they're going to run in Cape Town. The weather will be different, all the conditions will be different. I hope they do well and achieve all their goals and so on. Now, the second thing that we talked about was carbo loading, and I remember mentioning in the last video about how they made sure they were eating properly and so on, and he was working on a 3-day carbo load, which means you take in a certain number of grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. He thought after the event, the next time he'd go to a 2-day carbo load. Now, as far as I could discern, the difference was that with the 2-day one, you took in more carbohydrates but over a shorter period. I suppose part of it is that over 3 days, loading in your carbos, you might feel a bit bloated and heavy, whereas 2 days you're taking in the same amount only over 2 days. Maybe you feel a bit less bloated, at least a little less heavy. She did the 2-day carbo loading and felt that was about right for her. They talked about tapering, and that means just cutting down your training a little bit in that last session, last period before the event. He says he did a 3-week tapering and they felt that was about right, but there are some folks who argue or suggest the 2 days. I can't comment, I've never had to do that, so all I can say is, again, there's a thing that they talk about in the aftermath of the event, and something they want to review and give a bit more attention to, perhaps, before they set off for Cape Town, and then they're going to Shanghai in November. Now, there are a few other things that they talked about that undoubtedly had an impact on their performance as well. So I'll just go through those a little bit. They, as I said, they live in Thailand, but they are originally from England. So they went to England, visited friends as you would, and they ran in a 10k event up in the north of England, where it was cold and damp and miserable. Typical English weather by all accounts, but not what they're used to. And you would know, even the Goulburn people here, that cold, damp, miserable days in winter, when the winds are howling, it's hard to get out of bed, it's hard to get your body working, it's hard to be motivated, and you don't feel, the body doesn't feel like it's firing until it's run about a kilometre or something in the first place. So there was a bit of travelling around in the UK, and you think, oh well, that's okay, you can manage that sort of thing. These things have a cumulative effect. One event isn't usually the big event that sort of explains what happened. It's just there's a build-up of things. They get to Germany, and on the day of the race, there's all those nerves and build up and adrenaline and all that sort of stuff. And they get to their corral for their particular groups, and he's only just found his way to his corral, and it's like ready, set, go, and they're off and running. He wasn't quite settled in. Now, I've only ever run one big event like that. That was the Bridge to Brisbane event a couple of years ago. I don't know how many people ran that event, and I was in a particular group, but we got there in plenty of time to find our particular starting group. That's myself, my son and his wife. We got to our particular starting group with plenty of time. So we needed some water, we needed a toilet break, we just needed to relax and calm ourselves. We were able to do so. I live about 2k from the start of the park run, and I'd like to get down there with about at least 15 minutes before the start. I know the course, I know the briefing, all that sort of stuff, and I want to get there in plenty of time to be calm, relaxed, taking a toilet break if I need one, retie the shoes if necessary, all that sort of stuff. So I can imagine that getting to the corral for your starting group, just about getting inside it, then it's ready, set, go. It's been a bit unnerving and it puts you off a bit, let's put it that way. You haven't got time to sort of calm yourself and get into the run, the frame of mind you need to be in for the run. Now, as I said earlier, he knew after 1 kilometre that it just wasn't going to be his day. His legs didn't arrive, is how he explained it. I know when I'm doing this sort of running, or the park run, it takes me about 1 kilometre for the body to have properly warmed up, the blood to be flowing to all the muscles it needs to be flowing to properly, and the little tweaks where you feel stiff and you think, oh, I could just stop now, maybe not do today's run. You keep going through that because you know that eventually your body's going to warm up, and those little tweaks and twinges, they don't actually mean anything, it's just that you are stiff, have work themselves out. As I said, she was about 5 k's in and knew she started to feel sluggish and hot, and heart rate was too high and she couldn't bring it down, and she started worrying about time, the pace that she'd set herself and so on. And she realised that it just wasn't going to be the race that she'd planned. So she tried to just concentrate on the kilometre she was running at that moment and say, well, you know, what's my goal for this kilometre? What's my plan here? What pace have I got to run? So again, I suppose the lesson to them were, and as I said in the last video, you can do everything right, and then on the day things just don't go right, and it's nobody's fault. It just is what happens on the day sometimes. You wish it didn't, and you want to analyse it, and they have now. Thought, well, there are things that we did that we shouldn't do, or we won't do next time, and so forth. Now for them, I hope that the lessons of Berlin are learnt when they go to Cape Town. They've applied all those lessons and they perform as they want to. And the same for Shanghai, and it's the same for you if you're watching and thinking, what have I got to do? Some days, a diamond, as I've said before, and some days a stone. And you can do everything right, and it just doesn't all come together the way it should on the day. But you can only look and say, well, I did the best I could, and if I'm like these two, and then running is such a big part of my life, I want to learn from that and do better next time. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, as I usually say, leave them in the comment section. Please comment on the content and your thoughts about that. And if you have some useful tips for myself or other runners who are just trying to do their daily run and get a bit better, I'd appreciate them. When I become aware of your comment, I will respond. Have a nice day. Enjoy whatever you're doing. If you're out running somewhere at some stage, I'm just, for context here, coming down towards the Wannalilly River at the back of the historic waterworks in Goulburn. You can perhaps just see the river a bit through the fog there, and I'll be taking the pathway here. It's about 800 metres, I think, to Marsden Weir, and I'm 5.07 into my run already. So thank you for watching, enjoy your day, and I'll catch you in the next running video.